Good day, classmates. I am Detera from 2Y13, and now we will talk about the Bataan Death March.
Bataan Death March, a complete tragedy. Without access to proper medical care, the prisoners of war were made to march through humid and hot environments. They were forced to sleep in the harsh Philippine circumstances and suffered from starvation. The prisoners who were unable to complete the march were killed, tortured, and occasionally beheaded. Filipinos suffered disproportionately compared to U.S. forces during the Bataan Death March, leaving a terrible legacy.
As we go on, these are the forces and commanders of the march. First, General Douglas MacArthur, General Masaharu Homa, and General Masanobu Suji. All in all, the march has 60 to 80,000 Filipino and American forces on the Bataan Peninsula on the island of Luzon, Philippines.
The background of the Bataan Death March. During the Second Japanese War in the Second World War, the Imperial Japanese Army committed a series of war crimes in territories they occupied in China, Burma, and Southeast Asia. These crimes resulted in the millions of deaths of civilians and prisoners of war. The day after Japan bombed the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor, the Japanese invasion of the Philippines began on December 7 in the year 1941. After the surrender of joint U.S.-Filipino forces at the Bataan Peninsula in the Philippines on April 9, 1942, the Bataan Death March was such atrocity. During the Bataan Death March, the Filipino archipelago was defended by no more than 60,000 to 80,000 troops from the U.S. and Filipino armies, under the command of General Douglas MacArthur. However, he didn't have command in the Navy. As General MacArthur prepared for the defense of the islands, he abandoned the previously made defense scenario. It was a costly mistake that allowed the Japanese army to capture most of the country by the end of December. Facing defeat, General MacArthur switched back to plan, but it was too late. The remaining defenders withdrew to the area of the Bataan Peninsula that extended into the Manila Bay, and the Battle of Bataan began the first week of January 1942. The Bataan defenders showed fierce resistance, but it wasn't enough. The defense was prepared hastily and they were extremely low on supplies and ammunition. Their defeat was imminent. Later on, the surrendered Filipinos and Americans were rounded up by the Japanese in April 1942 and forced to march 65 miles from Mariveles on the southern end of the Bataan Peninsula to San Fernando. The men were divided into groups of approximately 100, and the march typically took each group around 5 days to complete.
After finally reaching Capas, the prisoners walked for another 8 to 10 miles. In the camp, they received a single bowl of rice as a meal. For most of the prisoners, it was their first meal since they began the march. The only was that they were finally able to lie down and rest their feet, though many of their comrades did not live to see them. In the days to come, many continued to die because of the inhumane conditions of the camp. Some of these from the exhaustion and dysentery they had caught along the way.
Estimates are that approximately 650 American soldiers and between 5,000 to 18,000 Filipino soldiers died during the march. After the war, Captain General Masaharu Homa, commander of the Japanese 14th Army, was put to trial for war crimes and sentenced to death in 1946. Masanobu Suji, a Japanese officer who ordered the killing of prisoners, avoided justice. Those who survived the Bataan Death March have detailed several horrors they endured both during the march and when imprisoned, including malnutrition, arbitrary beatings and stabbings, and the lack of basic first aid supplies, water, shelter, and other necessities. The Bataan Death March was one of the worst war crimes of the entire war in the Pacific. Its horrors are truly a perfect example of why historians have named the Second World War the War Without Mercy.
And this will be the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.